My name is Cynthia Nugent. I'm a children's book author illustrator. I'm also a visual artist. I've had over 25 shows in art galleries, public galleries, and commercial galleries. My journey into apps has been from paintings to interactive artworks where I build small machines that you can turn cranks and belts and make things appear by opening doors. I was basically making extremely painterly pop-up books, I think, from an early time. So in the last year, I've gone into a master's program in children's literature and am doing a thesis on the storybook app. So right away, that is my interest. This is my most recent book. It's called I Want to Go to the Moon, and it comes with a song. I am a member of the Vancouver Ukulele Circle, and I met a wonderful television songwriter there, and he wrote the music for it. So my movement towards interaction has been really strong throughout my career. And then I started doing compositing, painting painted backgrounds with photographs of characters on the top. And these were two very elderly dogs. I had 36 shots of them before they went to dog heaven. So I had to do a lot of compositing to create all the poses in the story. This is another book that I did with music. So I've done about 3 books that combine music in the old-fashioned way, that is, with a CD attached to the book. And it seemed to me that I was very interested in the multimodality of picture books. So when you think about picture books, they have the mode of words, text. With pop-up books, you can add the mode of interaction. With a book that comes with music or with a music engine built into it, you add music. This is the way it's been with books for hundreds of years. And pop-up books, which didn't actually originate in the 19th century, they originated in the 14th century. And what we have here is it's a paper book, and what it is a dial. It's called a volvel, and it's for doing your astrology. And they've made mathematical volvels as well. This is an astrolabe made of paper, again 14th century astrolabe. And then we move into apps. And apps are not only translating the mechanisms of pop-up books, they are also frequently borrowing the aesthetic that either from the 19th century, or in this case, this is the early film time from probably the 20s and 30s, that Numberlies by Moonbot is using. This is 3 Little Pigs, which refers heavily back to the aesthetic of the early 20th century, late 19th century. And I had a thrilling trip to the Museum of Childhood in Bethnal Green in London, and there saw early mechanisms used in children's toys. And this 3 Little Pigs, actually, if you tap on it, you get an X-ray of this basic machine, which is, it's quite interesting that in most apps, since they've been made, they are directly leaning on the mechanisms and aesthetics of existing pop-up books that have been around for over 600 years. When you look at Peter Rabbit, which was probably one of the ones that hit the popular press, this is done by Loud Crow in Vancouver, and it has very limited interaction, but heavily leans on the 19th century aesthetic. The same with Alice. So it was very fascinating to me. Here's this ultra modern format, but using, and even with Tokaboka is referring to basic welding, and all the machines are rusted and the paint's flaking off, and it's sitting in a cardboard box. So there's a heavy reference to materials in the physical world. This is a pop-up version of a volvel. So It's the wheel, and it's a counting book. You can see the top of the wheel and the numbers that spin around. There's a volvel that gives you nutrition. And you notice that in pop-up books, we are using things that slide and turn, a lot of sliders. So referring again back to pop-up books, here is a connect the dots, which we're all really familiar with. It's a very old technique for doing your alphabet or doing your numbers and connecting the dots. You find that technique over and over again. This is from Zinc Rose, Stella and Sam, and they use connect the dots to explain constellations. Of course, this is Stella's made-up constellations. And again, in The Heart in the Bottle, this is a constellation game where the father is pointing out shapes and the child is imagining what they are. She can't really relate to classical mythology, and she sees bows and diamonds and snakes. I did a study of how children responded to the Heart in the Bottle. I consider Heart in the Bottle the best, sort of the gold standard of what a storybook app can do, of taking these basic movements of slider, tap, and drag, and creating really deep, multi-leveled meaning that relates to the story. So you have maybe one interaction on the page that you continue to unpack, and I found that the children would stay on the page for 5 or 10 minutes unpacking this interaction. So in this case, as you do it, it is underlying the experience of this wonderful relationship between the father and the child. Later in the story, he dies. So the whole interaction building up to this is, as you do it, you're developing this wonderful rapport that exists between these two without even knowing it. And I asked the children when I was doing this shared reading, do you ever go outside and look at the stars with your parents? And one child said, my father doesn't like to go outside. So in a way, these actions can often be a stand-in for some of the things that maybe your particular family doesn't offer that kind of enrichment. And so it had this very sweet potential to inform a possible childhood. And as many of you know, if your childhood was not particularly rich, you can reclaim that richness in adulthood. You can study music, you can look at constellations and learn that and do that kind of learning play. So I think by exposing children to this, you can seed a thought of where they can explore later. A lot of things in books are the I Spy, finding things, hidden secrets. Children love finding secrets, and a precursor to that are books like Where's Waldo and the I Spy series. And then in Cinderella, there's a wonderful scene where they're doing I Spy, and the fairy godmother says, I need a pumpkin, I need 4 rats, and the child can move the background back and forth and search and gather these animals. So this is a very old game that continues to be very enriching and keeps the child on the page. So why would I say it's important to keep the child on the page? What happens when children look at picture books is there is a hermeneutic circle of understanding, a constant cycling between pictures and text, especially for children who are not strong readers. They're just learning or they're struggling. So they look at the words and they puzzle and they try to think, what do they mean? And then they study the picture, looking for clues to the meaning of the words. And sometimes in very sophisticated picture books, the picture does not illustrate the words. The picture adds and fills in parts of the narrative that are missing from the words. Sometimes the pictures contradict the words, and they cycle back to the words and they discover a new meaning, a new way to look at those words because of what the picture said. And then they go back to the pictures and they keep looking at the whole. And I found that in showing apps to adults and showing them to children, there was a completely different thing happening. The adults were flipping through very fast. Children that were strong readers were flipping through very fast. Children that were very young were devoting their whole concentration to studying the pictures and the words back and forth, and they would flip backwards, looking at a previous page to confirm something they remembered. So I learned a great deal from Warren's talk last year about you cannot make an app where the children cannot go backwards. They have to go backwards, and I saw this in picture books. Children always are flipping back and forth to remember and reconfirm things that they thought. Here is a very famous flip book, flap. It's a tap, I call it tap flap. So you lift the flaps in Ware's spot, and he's often looking for something. So is he in the box? And you lift the flap, and inside the penguins say no, which is very cute. And it's funny. It's a very transparent mechanism. You go, oh, this is a piece of paper I'm lifting up, but you have this belief and disbelief at the same time, which is a very enjoyable part about looking at mechanical books and picture books. So you find this happens again and again in picture books. Here you pull out something. Here in the case of the Jolly Postman, you pull out a card. You go following the postman on his route. And then you go to Duck, Duck, Moose, when she told that extremely moving story last year about the autistic boy who cried out, "Hello, ducks," and smiled at his mother for the first time. And so this is a tap and reveal as well. And this is a very old mechanism that's been with us for eons. This is a Ruckus Media one where there's a lot of tap and surprise in it. However, you're not unpacking story in this one. You're unpacking little things that move. So what's brilliant about the Duck, Duck, Moose ones and the Heart in the Bottle is every flap and tap you do unpacks part of the story and adds meaning. The flip book has, now this alludes to the Bologna Ragazzi winner that Warren just showed us in my dreams. Flip books have been around for who knows how long. This book is almost precisely the same as the winner, the grand winner of the Bologna Ragazzi Digital. This is a 1 million, your first million silly sentences. So then if you look at In My Dreams, it's almost precisely the same mechanism except translated digitally. So you can really tell that conceptually of what we're doing with our mechanisms that we are still very much attached to the world of books, and it will be very interesting to see if we start to depart from that. And the first evidence I had of that was looking at Windowsill yesterday that Barbara mentioned and that the children spent the whole day looking at, and it was astonishing, and we were all screaming with amazement and pleasure because it is actually creating an artwork that is unique to the platform. So here's the cover of The Heart in the Bottle, which again I said is my belief is the one app really, despite the few bugs that it has and the fact that they refuse to update the bloody thing. Here's one of the instances of making a game. She goes to show her father the picture that she made. So in it, you can make a picture, and the children, of course, love to make the picture. She runs to show it to her father. She ends up in the room, and there is the picture framed on the wall. And the children just, I didn't discover that. I had to do it with a child to discover it. Here again is special lenses. Picture books have come with magnifying glasses. They've come with 3D glasses. They've come with different lenses to view things with. And in Cinderella, they put a mirror using, oh yes, and they put mirrors in them as well. So in Cinderella, they're using the camera. They've used that pop-up method of putting in a picture in a mirror, which you can see my elderly face there, but with the children's, it's so they scream with delight when they see theirs. I scream with horror when I see mine. This is another lens, which in The Heart in the Bottle, which I thought was astonishing. It's an X-ray lens. So the X-ray hangs on the little hook on the corner in the top right, and then you drag it to the little girl, and you find her beating heart. It's an animated beating heart. It's an extraordinarily profound use of that lens. Here's the slider, which have been in pop-up books for many, many years. It's used in 100 Robots as Hildegard Sings. And here it is in a regular pop-up book, and you can see on the right, you pull the tab, which is equivalent to the slider, and it reveals something inside. In Heart in the Bottle, you push this slider, running your finger up the measuring stick to the child's growth, and as she grows, she actually grows in stature, what's in her brain changes. As a child, she thinks of herself with her father, and then she's an adult, it's empty, because she's put her heart in the bottle and he has disappeared because she can't bear to cry. I'd just like to finish this talking about my own journey, which I started out talking about. This is The King Has Goat Ears. It's done by a famous Quebecois artist in Canada. His name is Philippe Béat. This book won the BC Book Prizes 2 years ago. And I work with the publisher Tradewinds, is a small but well-respected press, literary press of children's books, and they asked me to design an app for this. I had no knowledge of the technology, but I've been doing children's books for 20 years and took Kathy Shoemaker's wonderful course on visual materials for children. Kathy's here with me. Some of you have talked to her. She's an encyclopedic fund of knowledge about picture books. So I'm going to open the app and show you what we've done so far. Do I have time to do 4 pages of the app? Yeah? Can I connect to, is it okay to open the app now from here? Yeah? Okay. Last year was really a wonderful year for me for my first year at App Camp, and I met Bill Martin of Smart Tots, and we both live in Vancouver, so Bill was very nice and phoned me or emailed me and said, why don't we meet for coffee and talk about apps? So we did that a few times, and then he really liked this project I was working on. He appreciated the art, so he said he'd like to work on it too. Okay, I'm going to turn this up.
Illustrations by Philippe Béat.
The narrator is Terry Jones of Monty Python, because this wacky publisher I'm working for knows everybody.
Every time he needed a hair, King Boyan never left the palace.
So it has a little bird that's on every page. It's almost like a Greek chorus. He's always laughing at the king. And the king is obsessed. There was a wonderful article in The Guardian online, which I think has the best children's section in the world, bar none, reviews on children's materials and apps. And what was I saying? I lost it. So the king never left the palace, so you can make him cry by tapping on the king. And this little bird is a little Greek chorus. He's always looking at the king and laughing. Oh yes, I know. They wrote an article, an interview with a Nosy Crow in London, and they are an interesting group because they come from book publishing and from games. And they talked about how you have to figure out what is the story about, and then the interactions support that. And it took me a while, and I understood finally that this book was about worrying about what other people think of your appearance. It's a very old Slavic story. The king has goat ears, and it actually originates in ancient Greece.
Every time he needed a haircut, a new barber was summoned.
I don't know if anybody's spent a lot of time in front of the mirror trying to press their cowlick down or their ears in. It's sort of this hilarious bathroom behavior of kids dissatisfied with their appearance. So we have the king trying to push his ears down. He thinks he's handsome.
The people talked and the king worried. So
I'll just play that louder. People talked and the king worried. So we have the king in the palace worrying, and we're just finishing now, or just working on these 4 pages. When you drag the people into little groups, they start to whisper, and the whisper magnifies, fueling his paranoia. So that's what we've done so far on that. It's a delight to work on this beautiful art. I've had to redo art in the style of Philippe Béat, because when you do animations, you need more scenes. So I'm really enjoying working with Bill, and I'm really grateful to Warren for creating this and teaching me so much. Thank you.